Try it one more time.
Yeah, one more time. So, again, thanks for having you on the show, James. It's absolute honour to have you. I know you've got some important information you're going to share with the listeners today. So how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
So, we've caught up a few times this week, and I've got a real insight into the amazing work that you've done on yourself, and how you've shared it with people around you. But for the people who've never heard of the man that is James McNeil, who are you?
Well, I'm a combat veteran. I served in the United States Army and from 1995 to 1999 rather to 2005. Can't get my dates right, but from 1999 to 2005, and then in 2003 I was deployed to Iraq in support of Operation first Enduring Freedom, and then I was over there when they changed it to Iraqi Freedom. I am a recent college graduate. I graduated from the University of North Carolina at Wilmington in North Carolina on the East Coast with a business degree focusing in management and leadership. And as you said, I am a recent author, having recently published Finding Your Personal Mission. And that book covers the journey that I went through in overcoming suicidal thoughts and ideations.
And again, I'm yet to read the full book, but it sounds extremely powerful, and I can't wait to get a copy and go through it. Though I have gone through a lot of what's on your blog, and it shares a lot of the ideas and what's going around it. And one of the things that was very clear was when you came out of the military, you found it extremely difficult to integrate into civilian life, and find your way. And it sounds like you weren't alone. There's a lot of other people that have that challenge.
That is actually a very common challenge. My situation may have been a little unique because of how I was discharged, but most veterans go through this in one way or another. The way it started with me was in January of 2005. I was in a doctor's office. I was having trouble with my knees again. I'd had surgery on each knee one time. And then the doctor said, well, you've got a choice. I can either do surgery again, or we can put you out of the military and let your knees heal on their own. And at that point, I was frustrated. I said, okay, let's just start processing the separation paperwork. And that was in January. By May, I was a civilian again.
So it didn't take long at all.
It was quick.
Okay.
I've talked to people that have been through a medical discharge like I had, that were on the books getting discharged for over a year and a half. I know one person that was in the process of his discharge for almost 2 years, trying to get things straightened out with the Army, and mine went through quick, very, very smooth, which sounds great. It's like at least you can now you can do what you haven't had in mind to do, but it doesn't leave a lot of time to prepare. As much as the Army tried to prepare me, and we went through our out briefing, and this is what you got to look forward to as a veteran. There's no way that I could have prepared for that in just a few months that I had.
Yep.
As a result, I and a lot of other people dealt with an identity crisis. And the way it works is you're a soldier, or in some case, Marine, airman, sailor. You're a soldier, and then now you're not. You went from having respect for who you were, having respect for the job you did, having that camaraderie, to now it's gone. And so you lose that identity that you had, because everything you did, everything about you was wrapped up in, I'm a service member. Again, soldier, Marine, airman, etc. But it was all wrapped up in who you are as a service member. And then now you're not anymore. So that identity crisis hits, and then you start looking for work. Boone Cutler in 2014 said that a large percentage, I believe he said 46% of human resources managers say it's a challenge to hire veterans because of PTSD. So with that in mind, are you going to get a good job? Chances are probably high that you won't. So you're not a soldier anymore. You have that identity crisis of who am I now? And you can't get a job. And it just spirals out of control from there. You can't make ends meet, family troubles, etc. And it goes, like I said, it goes on from there to sometimes being out of control. And that leads people to what I described as a permanent end to what's really a temporary problem. Your problems, what your stress, what you're dealing with, they are big, and I'm not going to ever say that they're not big, but it's still temporary. Suicide ends that permanently for you. You will never have another chance to make that right. You'll never have another chance to overcome that obstacle because you're not here anymore. That's why I call it a permanent end to a temporary problem. A lot of people, hey, thank you. A lot of people that get out of the military have that. It's a lot more common than even I realized.
So I'm thinking, from my perspective, because I'm not a military man. I've not had military service. And I think sometimes we have to really sort of, understand the difference it is. We think of things as changing our job. Okay. But from my understanding, and hearing the way you've discussed it, military service isn't a job. It's a way of life. You don't clock on and you don't clock off. When you're a soldier 24/7. That's the way you are. It's the way you train to be. It's the way you prepare to be. So I guess, for people in my shoes who think, well, you just get another job, what of it? And you think, well, you probably never had that clocking off at 5 and then what do you do with your evening before? I'm imagining, and you don't have that mindset. It's always a case of, well, even if the activity or the task is done for the day, part of your job is to prepare for the next day, and it's constantly always on. So I guess, for people like myself who just always been a civilian, never been in that way of life, how would you describe, that environment and sort of give us a bit more of an understanding really of what we're asking military people to do when we say, right, you're released now, go out into the world and get a job. And if I don't know if you can describe it from your perspective of just what is going through your mind when that happens.
For me, what was going through my mind whenever I first got out, I celebrated. I honestly celebrated, because when you're in the military, you're focused on the stupid stuff that you do. And every job in the world has stupid stuff. For us, one of the stupid things that we did, and people listening are going to just, yeah, this is true, especially if you got military service, you're going to see this. You'll have a commander that will say, okay, we need to be here in this location at 6 o'clock. So it'll go to the first sergeant who says, okay, let's back it up to 5:30 to make sure everyone's there. So he goes to his platoon sergeants and they say 5 o'clock. And then it goes to the squad leaders and they say 4:30. And you're there an hour and a half early. For what reason? Doesn't really matter. You're there an hour and a half early because everyone has got this mentality of, well, you need to be early. They said 6, we're going to say 5:30. They said 5:30, we're going to say 5. We're going to say 4:30. And it gets really, really dumb. Quite honestly, it does. But when you're looking to get out of the military, you're thinking, I'm not going to have any more of this stupid stuff to deal with. And so when I first left, I celebrated. I was so happy to not have to deal with that stupid stuff anymore. And then after a little bit, the realization hit me of, wait a minute, all this that I've been keeping my identity tied up in no longer applies to me. So it was a huge shock. It didn't hit right away, but it was a huge shock of, wait a minute, I'm not a soldier anymore. What do I do now?
Yeah, like you say, you mentioned that self-identity crisis of, well, everything I am is a soldier, but I'm not a soldier. who am I? And I think that's quite key to some of the topics you're going to be discussing later on, and some really powerful stuff that you work through. But also quickly, you referenced the whole, PTSD issue, and how when you go to the workplace, people are a bit, I suppose, reluctant to hire ex-veterans, which in a way seems a little bit crazy, because when you think of the level of training, the level of discipline, the level of personal values of someone in the military as embodied in themselves, which is way beyond the average man or woman, if we're honest about things, it almost thinks, well, surely that would be a great asset to any company, to any organization, to any enterprise, to any team, to have someone with that caliber, of credentials. However, one of the first things you said is it doesn't translate. So where do you think that comes from? Do you think people are assuming that all veterans, are wounded and scarred, or do you think they just don't have the experience of how to deal with these people?
I say yes to both, actually. When I introduce myself as a veteran, I've gotten everything from thank you for your service to some very crass questions, which I will not repeat, including one you should never ask a veteran. People just don't understand what it's like. And we're no good at explaining it, because we've got our own little language that we use. Acronyms, letters. The DD-214 is a paper that veterans get when you're discharged from military service. You get what's known as a DD-214. That shows that you were in. It shows what you did. It shows awards you received, where you served, what your job was. It's just one piece of paper that shows who you were. And like I said, this shows who you were because, again, your identity is so wrapped up in what you did. You tell that to a civilian, I got my DD-214. Okay, what's that got to do with me? So it's not only a lack of understanding, it's a disconnect on the language that we use with each other, and then the language that hiring managers use when you talk about job skills. And so a lot of veterans like myself, I struggled to civilianize my resume in such a way that people would understand, but it also explained what I did.
Yeah. And like I say, it almost sort of just blows my mind, because when you think of the qualities that go into creating a soldier, what's not to appreciate as a team member, and the fact that they've had that dedication, to raise themselves to that level of excellence, not just as a one-off, but as a lifestyle. You think, they show up every single day being the best version of themselves, because that's their job, that's their self-image, that's who they are. And you think, well, surely when that comes back to the workforce, we're going to luck in, because where else can you get a team of that caliber? But so it sort of blows my mind, like you say, that doesn't happen. You don't feel appreciated. You don't feel like there's a pathway for you quite often, and there's no obvious route into the workplace, and you don't know where to go. And as you said, and some of the topics we're going to go into, that has major repercussions on the identity of the individual. Because even though you haven't changed in any way, shape, or form, yesterday, you as a soldier, a very proud role, and then now you was a soldier, but you kind of still are a soldier, and you kind of don't know what you are now, and you don't know what you're going to be in the future. And you said that sort of clashes with your mindset of, well, what box do I put myself in?
Exactly. One thing that I hadn't talked about here, but after I got out of the military, for the next couple of years, I started looking for work that was something along the lines of what I did in the military. And it was so hard to find. And at this point is where I started questioning what the recruiter and the drill sergeant said. Because for years I had heard what you were talking about. Employers line up to hire veterans because you've got the training, you've got the discipline. And then when I get out, and it's so hard to find a job, because yes, I've got military training, but there's no way that I could have explained that to a civilian employer. And then I actually had one civilian employer tell me, yeah, okay, what you did in the military doesn't really count, which is frustrating, but it's also eye-opening to the fact that I wasn't explaining it well enough. So I went for a very long time without actually finding work. And that's what led to me getting very, very low and almost doing something, actually trying to do something that would have been bad if it had succeeded.
And that's why I personally really appreciate the work you're doing, and having followed the blog and, you know, the assets you got out there. What you've done is you've encapsulated really well how you perceived it, but what you've also done though is not just sort of sold the story, not just tell everyone what's happening. What you've done is you put a framework in place of how you turned it around, and also how others can turn it around. And I think that's something that is, A, it's very much needed, but B, it's been missing. Because I don't know what it's like in the US. I know we kind of touched on it when we spoke before the podcast, but I know in the UK, there's a lot of people who care deeply, you know, about helping veterans, about helping ex-military make that transition. But if we're honest, we don't know how. We don't know what to do. And I guess the corporate line is always, you're going to need a professional in these areas. You're going to need someone, you know, with letters after their name. You're going to need someone who's done the course. You know, don't get involved. Don't deal with it. Leave it to a professional. Now, having seen, you know, some of my friends and extended contacts in my network, what I've seen time and time again is while they're waiting for this professional service, you know, which they should have access to, while they're waiting for it, there's a void. They don't know when this solution is going to come in front of them. They don't know when they're going to get access to it. And as you've said yourself, when you're in a situation where you've got a bit of an identity crisis, you need to make money, you've got bills to pay, you know, the walls are crashing in around you, waiting 6 weeks for an appointment, 8 weeks for an appointment, waiting for the unknown phone call to happen, when it happens, if it happens. You know, how do you deal with that? Now, I do believe, and I don't know what it's like in the US, but I know in the UK, there's a lot of people that would just love to step in and help out. However, we're almost kind of trained not to, because it's like, well, you're not professional, you know, don't do the wrong thing. And what I like about the material that you've been sharing and putting out there is you put out a framework that really explains what's happening in the mindset of the individual, you know, both for the person suffering, but also for the person around them, to sort of get an idea of what is taking place. And you've also put a framework in place of actually, this is your path forwards. Okay.
Exactly.
You know, like without going too deep into it, I know you've experienced how low it can get, but you also know it doesn't have to stay that way. You know, like you said, it's a temporary, with the right mindset and the right framework, it's a temporary problem. But that doesn't take away from the depth of the problem. It's a real problem. It's a genuine problem. But if we've got these resources and the information that you're sharing, and I'm hoping we can get it out to more people, it's a temporary problem.
And one thing you said a minute ago, you talked about waiting for the people with the letters behind their name and the credentials and everything. It's very important for me to tell people I am not a doctor. I'm not. I've just recently earned a bachelor's degree in business. That's the credentials I have. I'm not here as a licensed professional. I'm not here as a person who has all the answers. I'm here to tell you, this is how I overcame these problems. And as I've said in presentations many times, there's nothing special about me that isn't also special about you. We have the same qualities. You can overcome this just like I have. So I'm not here as a professional. I'm not here as a licensed anything. I'm here as someone who has overcome these to say, you can do it too. Let me show you the way I did it. And that's, in my opinion, in my experience, it's a lot more powerful than any licensed professional could be in this role. Now, for someone who's experiencing real medical issues, if you're experiencing real medical depression, clinical depression, if you're experiencing, if you're going through PTSD, things like that, don't use what I'm giving you as a substitute for the real medical help you need. Go to those licensed professionals, get the help you need. This is not supposed to take the place of that. This is supposed to say, these are actionable steps you can do. Like you said, a framework. ways you can go step by step to deal with imposter syndrome, to deal with anger issues, to help improve your attitude, to make you not so afraid to fail. And if you do, or rather when you do, because we all will, what do you do that next step after you fail? These are actionable steps to help you daily to improve your position, because that's it. That is everything.
And you just mentioned imposter syndrome in there, which I know is a massive topic for you. Moving on from the identity crisis, you said you experienced imposter syndrome. How did that manifest for you, and how do you see it as a reoccurring theme with a lot of other people like you are in that situation?
Imposter syndrome for me came two ways. The first is the most common way, and that is something that a lot of people, not just veterans, professionals and veterans and students and everybody really that I've ever met has dealt with in some way or another. And that is the concept of, I'm really not all that great. And I've said this one, I'm not all that smart. I can just fake it real well. Now, I make jokes about myself all the time. Like, I'm not that smart. I just fake it really well and people believe me. That's funny, but when you start making these negative statements about yourself, and you and I were talking earlier today about how you see yourself being so vital. When you start making these negative statements about yourself and you start believing that, well, I'm really not that smart, I'm not that strong, I shouldn't be here, then you start thinking, well, I'm really just a fraud. I'm a fake. I'm not a successful business person. I'm not the hero. I'm not the um, I'm not really a veteran. I've actually heard people who served in the military but didn't go to combat say, "Well, I'm not really a veteran because I never went to combat." Well, yes, you are. Stop that kind of mess, because you signed the bottom line to defend this country. It is not your fault your commander never sent you to combat. You were still willing to go. And a lot of people who never went to combat face that concept because I'm just a fake. And that is imposter syndrome, 100%. So it starts with that. Well, I'm just a fraud because I'm not that smart. I'm just a fraud because I'm not that strong, or however you want to finish it up. I've got a friend who every time we talk, she says, well, you know me, I'm not really that smart. I'm kind of stupid. And
Yeah,
I
we
want
all
to smack
know
her in the
people like
head.
that.
Exactly. I want to smack her in the head. I'm not going to, but I really want to just lodge that out of her mind, to stop saying these negative things. But it's so common. And then the second way imposter syndrome literally almost killed me is I can't reach out for help because if I do, people will know I'm fake. And that's what the night, and it's in the introduction to the book, that night that I was very, very close to taking a full bottle of sleeping pills. I knew what it would have done to me. But that night, imposter syndrome was working so hard to keep me from reaching out, like it had for a long time. I'd had people up to that point saying, let me help you. No, I'm good. I'm good. No, I'm good. Don't worry about it. I'm fine. I'm fine. There's nothing wrong. And that was imposter syndrome saying, don't reach out because if you do, people will think you're fake. And it almost killed me.
There's a huge message there, and I know we did touch on it earlier because we both got the same opinion that your own, you can't outperform your own self-image, and
Exactly.
it can empower you and it can limit you. But whatever you say about yourself, and I know a lot of coaches will say, if you say the words "I am," be very careful about what comes next, because
Very much.
because
Yes.
that becomes you gradually. And we all know people who put themselves down. I guess I'm like it at some points, because you don't like to big yourself up, you don't like to have too big an ego, and then sometimes you might just put yourself down. But then what you got to be careful of is it's just a little thing to sort of win friends and influence, but next thing it really does become a big part of your character, and you start sort of limiting yourself in that way. So going back to the book, finding your personal mission, it's out now on Amazon. Who's it for? Is it for the veterans, or do you think it's for the people around veterans who want to get a better understanding of what's going on, or is it for both? Who do you think will get the most out of reading this?
The best way I can answer that question is to say this. Whether you are a veteran or not, if you have ever had the thought of maybe I should just take my own life, maybe the world is better off without me, you need this book. Now, my first audience is veterans because I am a veteran and I have a heart for veterans, but this is not just for veterans. If you've ever had that thought of maybe the world is a better place or would be a better place without me, then you need this book. And if you know someone who has had that thought or talked about it, or if you know someone who has committed suicide, you need this book. So it really goes for both. It doesn't just empower the person who's struggling, it also empowers their family to be able to help them, to be able to initiate that conversation. Because we can't say, oh, just call me if you need to talk, because they're not going to. Like I said, imposter syndrome will keep someone from reaching out. We've got to reach out to them. I can honestly say, since September 2017, I have not had a suicidal thought. I have not dealt with them. They are history. I'm not delusional. I know they can come back. The reason they're history is because I've taken what's in this book and put it into practice every single day. And I'm still putting it into practice. This is not something you're going to conquer and just, oh, I don't ever have to deal with that again. Yes, you do. I'm still dealing with it, and I wrote the book every day. The reason I haven't had to deal with the suicidal thought is because I'm putting into practice what this book says.
So there you have it. So it's Finding Your Personal Mission. It's available on Amazon. It's a very powerful book, and I think what makes it more powerful is the very fact that you can reference your journey. You know, you've been through it. Like it's easy sometimes to talk about the theory. I know I do it a great deal, but unless you put it into practice and you've seen the evidence and the results, it's very difficult to know, well, what is the right framework? What should I be doing? You know, opposed to just getting an idea and just hoping it works. This works. This is a framework that got you from that point to now, you know, when you're sort of expanding, living life on big terms. And just to sort of reiterate, if anybody really, really needs this book, you can get it on Kindle for, I believe it's less than $1 in the US, and it's less than £1 in the UK. So there's no barrier to getting access to this material. It's very simple to download on Kindle and access straight away. Is that right?
That is correct. And you had mentioned earlier the paperback version. There is a paperback version. And the only real advantage you have with the paperback version is you can take notes. The paperback version has a blank page in between the chapters that's there to let someone take notes if they want to. So, but you do have both options there.
Whenever I find a good book, I tend to get the paperback anyway. I often get the Kindle first, just to have a quick look, go, yeah, is this the real deal? And then straight away, if it's a good book, I get the paperback anyway, because I find it's so much better to get the key bits.
I love having a book in my hand. I like the Kindle. I love having Kindle. I like audiobooks. And I mentioned earlier that the book is going to be available on audible.com very soon. It's not there yet, but very soon. Audible, Amazon, and iTunes as an audiobook. But there's something that will never take the place of having a book in your hands. And that's just, I love having that.
Yeah, no, I'm exactly the same. Like just the other side of the screen is my big bookshelf. You know, it's always getting bigger and creaking under the weight because you just can't have enough good books, especially ones that are really powerful and that change your life. So
exactly, you need another bookshelf.
Yeah, a stronger bookshelf. Now, before we close out, like you made a very important point that, you know, the book is a great framework. It's a great resource. It's a great tool. It doesn't take the place of professional support, you know, so still go through those channels, still utilize those channels. However, you know, when there's a void, you know, or when you need some answers sooner, this is a resource that you can utilize. One thing I would like to ask you, and I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer, so forgive me if I put you on the spot, but if anyone listening to the show maybe has never had these thoughts, has never had suicidal tendencies and doesn't really understand it, however, someone in their close vicinity is that way and they want to help, but they just don't know what to do, I hope I haven't asked the wrong question, but is there any advice that you could suggest to those people, or is there anything that you could advise them, so they can make a difference without panicking they're doing the wrong thing?
Number one, seek training, most definitely. This book will get you started, but it won't train you. Seek training. Find somebody that you can learn from on how to do this to initiate that conversation. Step two, and you can really do this at any time, show your friend, show your family member that you really do care. Show by asking the question and then shutting up when they answer. They're going to tell you some stuff you're not comfortable with. Keep your mouth shut. Listen to what they have to say. They're going to talk about how life sucks. You don't have to correct them. No, life isn't that bad. They're going to put up walls in a hurry and not talk to you. You want to help? Listen. Ask the questions and then just sit back and listen and be their friend and show them that you care. You would be amazed how much that helps. If someone asks for advice, okay, give advice. If it were me, I would do this. If I were you, I would do this. But most of the time, people just want you to listen to what they have to say, and that listening makes such a huge difference. The people who listened and did not just jump in with, well, you need to do this, they were the ones that really made a difference for me. Because as I'm talking, I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. I should not be feeling this. They weren't judging. They weren't giving unsolicited advice. They just listened, and it helped so much. So number one, get the training. Number two, just listen.
Powerful stuff. Well, please, I'm getting my own copy of this book, so looking for, maybe I'll get it signed. Yeah, James.
No, we can work that out.
Excellent. But yeah, I'm definitely getting the copy of this book. So I think it's a very powerful message. I think it's required. I think it's information that we all need to have. So if you haven't jotted it down yet, Amazon, Finding Your Personal Mission by James McNeil. You've also got a blog, I believe, which I think is www.jamesmcneilauthor.com, all one word. Is that correct?
Correct. All one word.
McNeil, McNeil. And you've also got a Facebook page. So get on there and like that. So facebook.com/Find Your Personal Mission. Yes,
sir. If you have any questions, hop on the page, send me a message. We're in different time zones, so it may be a little bit before I can get to it, but as soon as I see it, I will respond to it. I'd like to leave you with one thought, and I actually had this pulled up on the book. I've got my computer over here and I'm talking to you. But this is not only for those who would consider suicide or those who are going through this low point in their lives, but also for their friends and family. For everyone listening, pay very close attention. It is not a weakness to let other people see where you're struggling, nor is it a strength to cover it up. And if you've been listening and you're writing down notes, write that down. I'm going to say it again. It is not a weakness to let other people see where you are struggling, nor is it a strength to cover it up. We're human. Give yourself permission to be imperfectly, perfectly human. It's fine, because none of us have life figured out. There's still areas I'm messed up in, and I need help. The difference is I know now to reach out and get that help, because struggling does not make me a failure, and struggling does not make you a failure. It just makes you human.
That's awesome. I like those lines as well. If it's okay with you, I'm going to get it on the blog when we put this podcast up, because I think that's something that people really need to write down and remember. I'd never heard of that before, but that hit home straight away. I knew exactly what you meant.
I appreciate it. It was a lesson I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah, well, it's one of those powerful things that I've been doing a lot recently, where I read the same stuff over and over and over again, and then all of a sudden one day it's the same thing, but it means something different. There's something different in the words, and that's one of those statements which I think when you first hear it, the full truth of it doesn't sink in, if that makes sense. But you read it a couple of times and a few times, and all of a sudden you realize, yeah, I get it now. It means something a lot deeper, and it's very powerful. So yeah, if it's okay with you, I'm going to add it to the blog with this.
Excellent. There's a saying I think it's Buddhist, but I'm not exactly sure where it came from. When the student is ready, the master will appear. And I like to adapt that a little bit. When your mind is ready, the meaning comes clear. You can read something 1,000 times. If your mind isn't ready to take it in, you're not going to get it. That one time your mind is ready to take it in, that's when it makes sense.
And like I say, when it's ready, it's ready.
Exactly.
But thanks again. Like, you know, it's a huge honor to have you on the show, James. Thank you for being you. You know, I'm really proud of what you've accomplished, and I'm really proud of the work you're doing. You know, and really grateful that you're out there sharing it. Really, you know, because it'd be quite easy to, like you say, put the weaknesses under the rug and pretend they never happened. But it takes a lot of strength to say, do you know what? I was that man, and this is how I overcome it. So credit to you, and I hope everyone gets on the book. So, and if there's any questions to the show, you know, bring them in. Ideally, go straight to James if you don't know how to get to him, even though I will share all the resources, you know, with this podcast in the show notes. If any reason you can't get to him, chase us up and I'll make sure you guys are connected, because, you know, like you say, the more we can get this to the right people and the more we can help, because we don't want to be facing these problems in the future if we're able to. You know, the more we can contribute and the more we can make a difference, then, you know, why not? We got to get this message out there.
Most definitely, yes.
Well, I'll bid you a good day, but hopefully we'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one.